Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap the notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Oh, and don't forget to share the video far and wide. This will all help with YouTube's algorithm and will help promote the channel more. If you enjoy listening to the following story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. This awesome author has a new novel available on Amazon, titled Beneath the Asylum by Jgrupe. So go grab yourself a copy of this awesome book I already have. The links for the book will be below in the description. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. Dungeons and Darkness Part 3, Where the Dead Things Live. This fantastic series is written by Jgrupe, a wonderful author over on Reddit's NoSleep subreddit. We were far underground, in the dark, torch-lit tunnels of a dungeon. The blue wizard who had reluctantly become our guide led us down one hallway after another. I had no idea how he was deciding which direction to go, but he seemed to know what he was doing, so I didn't question it aloud. Brad did though. How do you know which way to go? And we'll take another left here. Watch out for that floor tile. If you step on it, poison darts will shoot out from that hole in the wall right there. Sorry, what were you asking? Oh right, well, I usually just head in whatever direction feels right. Wizard's intuition, you know. So, you're guessing? How rude. A wizard does not guess. He posits. And I posit that just around this corner will be the next chamber room, where we shall face our second challenge. Sure enough, we rounded the bend and there it was. Another wrought iron gate which rattled upwards and allowed us to pass through. Careful of the tripwire, there's a bucket of acid or something waiting above the entryway. I'm fairly certain if one of you boys sets it off, it'll be quite cross with you. That's good acid after all. Pity to waste it. That's it. 1 step, 2 steps, there we go. He guided each of us through the doorway and into the room with an earthen floor and a large dead looking tree growing at the centre. The tree had no light to grow by, and I could not understand how it was there. It didn't look particularly healthy. The branches were gnarled, greyish green and black. It had a diseased looking trunk and no leaves could be seen growing upon it. Decapitated heads with rotten flesh were instead sprouting from it in places like nightmare fruit. At the centre of its trunk, staring out at us, were 2 black pits that resembled eyes, and what appeared to be a yawning, or silently screaming, mouth beneath that. I jumped when the iron gates slammed shut behind me. We were trapped within the terrifying space until we could defeat whatever enemy was there waiting for us. But I saw no one. Are you guys on edge as I am right now? I feel like something's gonna jump out and attack us at any second. My guess is undead ghouls, said the wizard. Lots of them. Aim for the head or decapitate to the base of the skull. Don't forget, the most important thing is... Suddenly, a vine came up probingly from the dirt and wrapped itself around the wizard's leg, pulling him downwards with incredible force. He disappeared into the loose soil a second later, and there was only a concave shape in the dirt and a floppy blue hat where he had stood a moment before. From beneath our feet we could hear vague, muffled, screaming sounds. I don't think this is a zombie challenge, guys. I'm pretty sure that we need to kill that tree before it kills us. Roots were coming up from the black earth beneath our feet and we ran towards it, weapons in hand. Tom attacked the demon tree first, using his double-sided axe to deal heavy blows to the trunk. Its mouth opened wider, letting out a deafening moan of rage. It began to bleed, black liquid pouring from its side where he attacked it, but still the monstrous tree was sturdy and strong, and I saw Tom begin to quickly tire and look concerned at the lack of progress he was making. Suddenly the branches were bending and stretching out towards us from above like giant arms, twigs closing in around us like greedy fingers. Brad was a sure shot with his bow and arrows once again, and he shot directly at the tree's eyes and mouth, causing it to become distracted with the agony being inflicted upon it. The thing quickly turned its attention to him and sent roots up through the soil at him. His terrified screams rang out through the room as they attempted to grab his legs and pull him under with the wizard. Noel, the barbarian, jumped up into the tree and began to break larger branches with his huge club, reaching down and smashing at the thing's face with it as well. It seemed like our efforts were futile. I thought as I swung my sword again and again. I was attempting fruitlessly to slice into the iron-hard trunk of the horrible tree, wincing with each jarring impact as the sword's hilt bit into my fingers and blisters began to form. But then something wrapped around my ankle and I realised I had been standing still for far too long. The roots and vines had found me from below and they pulled me downwards with great force. I tried to scream but no sound came out, frightened as I was after seeing what had happened to the wizard. I kicked and twisted away as it pulled at my leg. Using my sword I thrust it down into the dirt, trying to cut the root that had trapped my ankle. A thin pointed branch suddenly came up from above while I was distracted and snuck in through a crack in my armour. It stabbed into my gut and drove itself deeper into my flesh with its sharp end. It dug and scraped at my insides and I gripped my teeth against the pain. Wailing in agony, I swung my sword blindly at it and I managed to sever the branch before it could penetrate any of my vital organs. I pulled out the piece of wood which was as wide as my thumb and twice as long, beginning to feel woozy when I saw blood pouring out from the hole it left there. There was nothing to bandage it with, so I tried to cover it with my trembling hand. Fear began to consume me then, as blood was spouting like a faucet, leaving my hand warm and stained crimson red. As a child I had passed out at the mere sight of my own blood, and had ended up in hospital once after fainting at school. I had largely gotten over that irrational fear, but still my vision began to go red around the edges, then a jaundiced, pixelated yellow as I fought off unconsciousness. I pressed my hand down firmly against the wound, applying as much pressure as I could. Surprisingly, it felt better almost immediately. Looking down, I saw the hole in my stomach was gone, completely healed over with smooth new flesh. I examined my hand and saw it was glowing faintly blue. Of course, I'm a paladin. Paladins have healing abilities, I thought to myself. Tom finally began to make some progress on the tree trunk, and I heard it splinter and crack as it was about to tip over. The face on the tree now resembled one of surprised horror, and the gaping mouth opened wider as if it was screaming as the tree fell. A hand suddenly popped up from the soil, and then another. An arm reached out and attempted with great effort to pull itself up and out of the dirt. "Zombies!" Noel shouted, getting ready to swing his giant club. A filthy white bearded face popped out, spitting clumps of black soil. Hold on! Damn barbarians! So start a quick swinging their clubs when what's needed is a bit of common sense." "Oh, sorry about that," Noel said, and reached out to help the wizard up out of the ground. "Nonsense, no harm done, and you defeated that devilish tree. Great work, boys, quite impressive." The gate at the end of the room rattled open and we prepared ourselves to move onwards. "By the way guys," I said, "I think I found out another ability that I've got. I just got stabbed by the tree and a huge hole in my stomach, gushing blood the whole 9 yards. Now look." I showed them my stomach where the flesh was completely healed with no sign of a scar. Yes, typical paladin healing hands. Only works on minor flesh wounds of course, but still quite handy. You must have levelled up somewhere along the way." "Levelled up? Seriously?" Of course. Personally, I'm level 87. I've quite an arsenal of skills and abilities at this point. We sure hadn't seen any of them yet. I was wishing more and more that Dungeons and Darkness had come with instructions. Apparently, this was an extremely complicated game. Who are you anyways? Did you play this game and get trapped in it like us? He looked at me and shrugged his shoulders. You know, I don't really remember anymore. It's been a long time. I'm having fun anyways, so no complaints on my end. That was when I realised that this game was more insidious than I had thought. It not only trapped the people playing it, but made them want to stay there. The man was obviously from our world, but had been stuck there so long he had forgotten where he came from. Brad, do you remember if there was a wizard character card in that box? I whispered to him. No, there definitely wasn't. I remember because I wanted to pick that class, but it wasn't available. I thought that was weird, since what fantasy game doesn't have a wizard or mage character? I think maybe he's the guy who left that box in your basement, Brad. Or maybe his family hid it there under the stairs and sealed it up after he disappeared. Yeah, you could be right. So what? Big deal if he wants to stay here. I kinda get it. This place is scary, but it's fun too. Like being in a game. I examined Brad with newfound concern. He had a strange look in his eyes. Are you okay, man? I'm a little worried that this place might have some control over people. That it might be changing us like it changed him. His family's probably worried sick about him and he doesn't even remember who they are anymore. Brad shook his head and looked like himself again for a second. Yeah, you were right. We just need to get to the end, save my mom, and get the hell out of here. After steering around more booby traps and pitfalls, we finally reached the next chamber. The gate opened to reveal a new horror. We stepped inside hesitantly, and there was no question who our foe would be in this room. She stood at the other side, blocking the path to the door. It rattled shut behind her and slammed into the stone floor with a loud clang that echoed throughout the space. The being which stood before us was tall, nearly 7 feet I guessed. She was pale and extremely thin, all bony elbows and shoulders, and wearing a black funeral dress. Her head was lowered and she stared at the floor. Then her gaze slowly rose to meet us. A mad, grinning face looked up at us, her eyes were missing, and only shadowy, empty sockets remained, staring out at us. Dry lips cracked as her smile went wider than should have been possible, deforming her face into a Picasso image. What the hell is that thing? I asked the wizard. Honestly, he said, I have no idea. She began to cackle and raised her hands upwards, and I felt my feet lift off the ground as I hung suspended in the air, floating. Okay, that's a new one. Looking up, I saw spikes jutting out from the ceiling above. They appeared razor sharp, and I had no control as I began to pick up speed, defying gravity and heading straight towards them. Screaming, I put my arms in front of me and braced myself for pain, and for the darkness that would surely follow. Part 4. The Curse of the Necromancer King. I looked up and saw an array of sharp spikes were waiting for me on the ceiling as I drifted upwards. The tall sorceress below had cast some sort of spell which caused us to disobey the laws of gravity, sending us hurtling towards the ceiling where deadly stalactites were waiting to impale us. Luckily for us, we had a wizard on our side. He cast a spell which created a translucent blue barrier on the ceiling. It blocked our path, and although it hurt when I slammed into it, I could feel it give way slightly, just enough so that it didn't break any bones or cause any real damage. Hup! The blue wizard bounced acrobatically off of the barrier and hurtled back downwards like a torpedo, straight towards the eyeless sorceress in her black funeral attire. She hissed like a territorial cat as he approached. With his staff held out in front of him, he sent forth a burst of blue energy which struck her and sent her reeling backwards, but only momentarily. She quickly regained her wits and prepared a counter-attack. With her hands outstretched, a shimmering blackness began to permeate the space between them. As the blue wizard hurtled through it, seemingly unable to stop himself, it started to solidify. The black shimmering space suddenly turned into dark spider webs which caught him up and disabled him completely. He wound up hanging precariously from the sticky dark strands, his legs hanging through the twisted loops, looking like a giant fly caught in a web, or a Great Dane trying to climb into a hammock. Blast it! Mana leeching webs! You boys will have to save me. I'm no use while I'm trapped in these vile things. I jumped off from the blue force field, as did Brad, Tom and Noel. We were sent hurtling by some magic force downwards. Immediately I regretted the decision as the ground came racing up towards me sickeningly. We were falling from over 100 feet in the air with nothing to slow our descent. The stone floor was coming up towards me so fast I knew for certain I would die from the impact of the fall. Part of me wondered what I had been thinking following the wizard's lead as he had dropped to the floor with ease. We were not as skilled as him and now we die for our mistake. But instead of hitting the floor hard and splattering body parts everywhere, our bodies slowed down at the last second and I wound up landing softly on the ground with the agility of a house cat. We had managed to avoid the webs cast by the sorceress, and she seemed to be recharging for another attack. Tom raced towards her with his axe held high, a furious red-haired dwarf ready for a battle to the death. The wizard screamed from above, warning him that she was a dangerous foe and not to be taken lightly. Brad, the elf, pulled back the string of his bow and released an arrow which was aimed squarely at the woman's blank, shadowy eye socket. He timed it perfectly so that just as she was countering the dwarf, left distracted, it hit her true. But still her counterattack against Tom was fearsome and I winced as I watched it all happen in a split second. With lightning speed she created what looked like a long spear-like icicle made of shadows, in the same motion stabbing the dwarf as he brought down his axe, which ended up going wild and missing her completely. She laughed and pulled back the spear, dark blood pouring and oozing from the arrow which remained lodged in her left eye socket. Blood poured from her mouth and she began to gather a ball of black lightning in her palms. Brad took a few more shots with his bow. His skilled archery was effortless and done with such speed that before the first arrow had struck its target, the second was already drawn back and was ready to fire. I went over to assist Tom and looked up to see her release the ball of lightning at Brad. The blast of energy hit the elf square in the chest and his bow went flying from his hands as he collapsed to the floor. He lay there unmoving and looked dead. The rise and fall of his chest was indiscernible and I thought for sure he was a goner. Noel saw this and began to build up into a furious rage. If you know anything about barbarians, you'll know that they are most dangerous when in a berserker rage. His face became red and he gripped a huge club tightly in his hand. Then he began to run forward at the dark sorceress. She saw him coming and her fear was unmistakable. Although she was powerful, the giant hulking warrior racing towards her in an unbridled fury of rage was impossible to ignore. Releasing one blast of dark lightning after another, she attempted to strike him down the same as she had done to the elf. But each time he ducked and rolled and evaded her attacks. My healing hands had returned Tom to a state of semi-normalcy, so I left him moaning and groaning where he was and ran over to help Brad. I'd found him lying on the cold stone floor, his face pale and his lips ashen, sputtering and attempting to breathe in ragged fits and bursts. I could tell Brad's wounds were far beyond my skill level. The blue healing glow of my hands did nothing to alleviate his pain, and I looked up to see the blue wizard above us, still trapped in the dark magic spiderwebs, shaking his head and looking at me helplessly. Then his eyebrows went up and he spoke. "The red potions!" he shouted. "Are there any left?" I looked in the bag Brad had been carrying and found there was only one left. Popping off the stopper cork, I poured the red liquid into Brad's mouth, hoping it could revive him before it was too late. Glancing over to Noel, I saw he was engaged in a heated battle with a dark sorceress, and her magical powers was proving to be no match for his berserker rage. He was now bright red, head to toe, shaking with furious anger as he swung his massive club about him in a tornado rampage. The sorceress fled from him but wound up caught in his attacks and was soon laying battered on the ground, her magic sparking and sizzling insufficiently from her fingertips as she died in a pool of black blood. The wizard suddenly fell and landed hard on the stone floor next to us, the ensnarement spell she had cast now worn off and gone. "You alright?" I asked after he stood up, brushing himself off. "Just peachy," he said. "Everyone else? All accounted for?" I looked around and saw somehow we were all indeed alive and well, but we were completely out of red potions now. "Not even one left?" I shook my head sadly. "Well, no matter. There should only be one more chamber left to go now. After that, you'll be free to go back home, if you should so wish." We all looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean by that?" I asked suspiciously. "At the end of every dungeon, you get a choice. A purple potion or an orange one. If you drink the purple one, you stay. If you drink the orange one, you go home. Simple as that." "So you've always picked the purple one? You've never wanted to go back home after one of these dungeons, even after almost dying like we just did?" He raised his eyebrows and looked perplexed. "Why would I ever want to leave this place? This is everything you could wish for. But I won't judge you if you want to go. You're only level 2 after all. You've barely scratched the surface of what this place has to offer." For some reason, that statement kind of annoyed me. It made me want to prove him wrong. But then I shook it off and told myself not to be silly. This place was a trap, and we'd already realised that. I couldn't afford to forget it now. This place wanted to keep us here, to feed off of us. To be honest, I didn't know if that last part was true, but it felt right, especially when I looked at the long bearded face of the decrepit blue wizard, who couldn't even remember who he was anymore. No, we had to get out of here. Even if he wanted to stay, I had to make sure the 4 of us escaped. "Okay, we'll give it some thought," I lied. "Now, can you help us through the final chamber of this dungeon so that we can all, level up?" "Get the hell out of here" is what I wanted to say, but didn't. "You got it, bud. Let's keep this party moving forward. If you make it to the end, there's always something cool in a gold chest waiting for you there. I call dibs on any legendary magical items though." "Fair enough." The blue wizard continued to lead us through the dungeon, down more twisting, turning corridors, booby traps and pitfalls becoming more and more frequent. Even secret doors opening up here and there to reveal undead ghouls who crept up silently from behind when we thought we were safe, nearly killing us several times. Each time we evaded serious injury and managed to dispatch them, although I did need to use my healing hands a few more times. Once even on the blue wizard, who missed a trapdoor tile and wound up getting shot with a poisoned dart. Finally though, we made it to the final chamber of the dungeon. We entered a room made of skulls. The walls were lined with coffins from floor to ceiling, and the whole place looked like a giant cathedral or monastery. Pews were lined in rows, and we walked past them silently as we made our way towards the dais at the front, where I could see someone sitting on a huge throne. There at the front of the chamber was a man dressed all in black, a hood covering his face which was shrouded in shadows. An ornate and ancient looking pointed obsidian crown sat atop his head. He was tapping his finger impatiently on the armrest as we approached. "Ah, Lord Necromancer, we meet again," said the wizard, his eyes cold and hard. His demeanour was always jovial and happy, and I had never seen him look like this before. "You've met him before?" I asked. The wizard's eyes widened with realisation and remembrance. They flicked back and forth as if picturing a great many things in his mind's eye. Memories passing through his vision like movies played upon a screen in his thoughts. "Elizabeth," he whispered, "I remember now why I never wanted to leave this place, why I always chose to stay." We looked at him, still not comprehending. It was him. We played this game together once upon a time, Elizabeth and I. We both fell into the game the same as you four. We almost made it through to the end, but then he took her from me. No matter how many times I kill him, it isn't enough. It's never enough. The dark hooded figure on his throne began to laugh, a deep throaty chuckle that echoed throughout the room. "Foolish mortals! Once I've taken a soul from you, someone you truly love, never can you escape my domain. I will own you boys forever, like I own him. All I have to do is kill one of you, and the guilt will bound you to my domain like a sturdy iron chain around your souls." He stood from his throne and clapped his hands twice, loudly. All at once came a sound of cold stone being lifted and moved from 1,000 places at the same time. 1,000 coffins, their lids being slid open from the inside by cold dead hands. Then one by one, the dead began to stand, stretching from their slumber and marching with murder in their eyes towards us. Don't forget, if you enjoyed that story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they really would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. Don't forget to check out the merch store. The link will be in the description and also in the video thumbnail. And if you'd like an honourable mention, send in a snapshot of yourself with your purchase and I'll feature it in one of the videos. Have you written a creepypasta story you would like me to narrate? Have you had any cryptid sightings, paranormal or supernatural encounters, or even had a creepy or terrifying situation you would like to share? Well, I now have my very own subreddit community where you can submit your stories. The link for that is also in the thumbnail as well as below in the description. You can submit your stories there, or you can send them to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. Now I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit and Discord. And if you'd like to support the channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit and Discord. And if you would like to support the channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost, and any and all donations would be gratefully received. Again, that will also be below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.